Maybe big data has gotten too big. Whether you're a B2B marketer or a consumer brand, your data needs to be viable, relevant, and accessible so that Stirista can help you retain customers, acquire customers, and make it personal.
Welcome to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista, probably the most entertaining marketing podcast you're going to put in your ear. I'm Vin, the producer here at Stirista. The goal of this podcast is to chat with industry leaders and get their take on the current challenges of the market, and we'll have a little fun along the way. In today's episode, Houchins, head of marketing at G2, talks about acquisition, leads, and opportunities created by a strong team, and how customers are advocates for allowing for opportunities to grow. Ajay dons some glowing orange Stirista apparel, and Vincent is happy to have friends. Give it a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stirista's The Marketing Stir. I am your host, Vincent Petrofessa, the Vice President of B2B Products and Partnerships here at Stirista. It is so great to be talking to you all again. I love the great feedback that people have been giving us about this New Year's episode. So thank you for all of that. We do appreciate it. Let's pause just for like 10 seconds to talk about Stirista. That's the only time we talk about it. That's okay. We try to pay some bills around here. I'm kidding. That's not really a thing. We're not a professional radio network. But Stirista, we are a marketing technology company. We own our own business-to-business data, business-to-consumer data. We help people access that data to help get their message out to them, to help them get some new customers through our own technology, ESP, DSP we own. You could do email, display, connected TV, OTT. Email me, vincent@stirista.com, if ever interested in any of our services or interested in being on the podcast. Let us know. Ladies and gentlemen, I am confident about what I just told you, and I'm also confident about this next guest. He is coming in hot with the orange, ladies and gentlemen. It's our one and only CEO, our founder, Mr. Ajay Gupta. What's going on, Ajay?
Yeah, besides my orange glow, I look like a big blob of orange, but luckily most people listen to this podcast and not watch it. So.
I know. I was telling that to our guest, most people, and there's a lot of you. Thank you so much. Who would have ever thought that people would want to listen to us, Ajay? Actually, we always thought, like, well, more people should just listen.
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves. We
Yeah,
have always believed people love hearing our voices.
I know. Yeah, so you're right. I shouldn't sugarcoat that. I'm surprised, but I'm like, yeah, we got something to say. So that's
Hey, just because our wives don't like to hear our voices doesn't mean we don't have fans.
Oh, I know. You know, the other day, I was in and I think I said this in the podcast. I was with a group of like parents. You know, like you hang out with parents now when you have small kids, whether you like them or not. That's a whole other story. But one of the moms said, she's like, "Oh, your wife must laugh all the time." I said, "She does not. She does not." You would think that she would laugh and enjoy, me and my personality. She does not. But it is good to see you, AJ. You do have a glow. Whether you're wearing black or whether you're wearing white or orange, you always have a glow. And I'll see you soon. We're having a sales summit down in San Antonio. I'm coming down there the time this airs. I've already been there, so I had a great time. I'm sure my presentation wowed the crowd. But yeah, we'll be back in San Antonio. This is the time I like coming to San Antonio, when it's like Jan, Feb. I don't like coming out there in August, I got to tell you.
Yeah, I was in Colorado, so God knows what the temperature was. It was in the negative, I think. But then I was back home in San Antonio for a day or two, and it was 75 degrees. And then I had to leave for CES to go to Vegas, and there it was 40 degrees. So I definitely missed out on some of the good weather in San Antonio. But luckily it's continuing, so hopefully it stays warm for you.
That'd be nice. Yeah, bring some good weather, some good conversation. We'll have a good time. Looking forward to seeing everyone out there. AJ, I'm also excited about this guest. Let me tell you something, because oftentimes we talk about this on the podcast. In our industry, there's a lot of companies that you hear about, right? I remember, people, when we had someone from Zoom, right? Zoom has become part of the vernacular. You hear companies like a Snowflake, right? And also G2. G2 is one of those companies that so many people talk about. And we're so glad that we have someone on from G2. This gentleman, he used to live in New York City. I wish he still lived here. We do this podcast live over a beer, maybe. But he's with us today. He's in another cool city. He's calling in from Atlanta. Ladies and gentlemen, the head of marketing at G2, Palmer Houchins. What's going on, Palmer?
Hey, not too much. Thanks for having me. I wish we were doing this over a beer in New York too.
Yeah, it would be fun. We've never done a live episode, right? I was talking to AJ and I. We're talking about it. Maybe at a conference near you, ladies and gentlemen, coming to you. Let's get on that marketing department. We have thousands and thousands of listeners. Get us in front of people. But anyway, yeah, it would be fun. Palmer, you and I, great conversations already. We bonded over New York. We bonded over your alma mater, Ole Miss, for which I did not go to, but my favorite quarterback of all time, Mr. Eli Manning, did. I am a big Giants fan, as the good people who listen to this podcast know. But Palmer, I'm not lying when I say people are talking about G2. People are like, oh, I went to G2. Oh, my company's up at G2. I did all my research there. So for those of the listeners who maybe know the brand, know the company, tell us in your own words, G2 and your role within the company.
Yeah, sure thing. So G2, we think of ourselves as the world's largest and most trusted software marketplace. Kind of put that simply. Because it's a marketplace, we have two sides. So on the one side, you have software vendors, folks like yourselves, who list their products. We've got about 145,000 of those on the site. So just a really big critical mass, sort of reflects the global software market there. And those are spread across 2,000 categories. So a lot of coverage there. And then on the flip side of the marketplace, we have the software buyers. And what I think is really unique about that is we have anybody from a mom and pop shop who's just looking for an email marketing solution or something, very small, all the way to the biggest Fortune 500 enterprises out there who may be researching a highly specialized like cybersecurity solution. So the beauty is being able to bring those two sides together. That's the company at large. From a commercial solutions perspective, we have a marketing solution that helps those software vendors reach those software buyers. We have a data solutions offering that kind of gives a bird's eye view to folks like investors, and they can get a better sense of what's happening in the software landscape or specific categories or companies that are really emerging. And then we have a traditional SaaS solution called G2 Track that's just a software spend management product that's very, in the climate that we're in today, is very, very popular as folks are looking to trim their spend and make sure that they're as efficient as possible. From just a company perspective, we have around 700 employees, headquartered in Chicago, but offices in London and Bangalore as well. And then quite a few folks like myself who join remote every day, as most of us are used to doing for the past 2 or 3 years. I joined in the summer of 2021 as the VP of Brand and Comms, and recently moved into the head of marketing role here. So lead our brands, product marketing, and demand teams.
That's awesome, and congrats on the promotion. It seemed like that's good for you, and thanks for that breakdown. I kind of knew one piece of the business there, but thanks for clarifying for myself and the listeners. Palmer, one of the fan favorite questions, because a lot of people, it's not a traditional path, but maybe it was for you. I mean, you worked at some great companies. It looks like MailChimp, so you kind of know a little bit of our world, although we're different from them. But talk to us about how you got into marketing.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it's very rarely a straight path for folks in marketing. I mean, you meet the occasional marketing major who then goes into it, but I didn't have that straight path. So I studied history and journalism in college, and if you'd asked me at the beginning of school, I thought I wanted to be a writer, could be a journalist somewhere. Simultaneously, while I was in school, I had a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak, and I got interested. I was always interested in music, but started doing concert promotion, artist management, just fun stuff to do when you're in college and you have the time, and staying out till 1 a.m. to put on a concert is no big deal, which sounds like my worst nightmare today. but that kind of led me into the world, and it's sort of like the earliest forms of digital marketing. I mean, this was back in the early 2000s. So, MySpace and Yahoo groups and things like that are have gone by the wayside. But I started getting interested in marketing that way, and kind of by the time I finished college, I realized, you know what, I don't think going to be a journalist at a small newspaper somewhere is really what I want to do. And I kind of built up this skill set in marketing. So I found a role right out of school with the startup. It was a digital music startup, and worked with them for a year before everything kind of went under there, which is a good lesson in both startups and entrepreneurship there. And then moved over to a magazine and an agency, doing various marketing roles, kind of focused in the music and entertainment space. About 11 years ago, I just kind of wanted to make a change. I thought about I was actually in the process of going back to get my MBA, and to sort of move into the software kind of technology space. And around that time, a friend had kind of connected me with this company, MailChimp, that I wasn't really that familiar with, but kind of in the early days of the company, joined as a brand manager, kind of marketing manager role there. And that's what kind of pivoted me into the SaaS space. So worked there for about 7-8 years. Worked at another company here in Atlanta called CallRail, leading their marketing efforts, and now I'm here at G2.
Awesome. And G2 obviously has such a good brand name and a big brand name. So tell us a little bit about how you're marketing and what are some of the channels and strategies you're using.
Absolutely. So, if you had asked me this question 6 months, a year ago, I would say really our marketing is focused on acquisition only. Like, we just want to get new leads in, get opportunities for our sales team created. We're absolutely still doing that, but I think given the climate that we're in, we have a renewed focus on kind of retention and expansion. So that's the scope of marketing's gotten bigger. We're really trying to better engage our customers. We just as G2 are pretty strong believers in what we would call customer-led growth. So use your customers as your best advocates, and use them as your opportunities to grow. And so we're trying to kind of practice what we preach there. From sort of a tactical level, we're digital natives. We're obviously using all the different acquisition channels we can there, whether it's paid search, social, display, ABM. Those are all areas for us. But I think I kind of reflect on that. It all starts with great content for us, whether it be SEO or just something to drive all of those acquisition plays. So we spend a lot of time focused on content that's going to be relevant for our audience. We also, look for opportunities to engage through webinars, and in the past year through in-person events and PR a little bit more. And then have sort of underneath that all kind of a robust email marketing and marketing automation strategy to help continue to engage those folks who may have shown some interest.
And what does your ideal customer look like?
Yeah, the ideal customer for us is obviously a B2B software company or service. And I think when you really, which is a very kind of wide total addressable market, but when you really narrow in on that, for me, what I'd look for is a company, and it doesn't really matter the size. We have, small startups to very large enterprises active on G2, but it's folks who understand the value of customer marketing, customer advocacy, and then also the value of demand generation. So they're able to leverage some of our, more what we would call our essential tools, building out a profile, getting those reviews, building up a presence there. And then, sort of slowly be able to graduate or use our more demand gen focused tools. So leveraging buyer intent data to make kind of to do more informed marketing for yourself. So it's somebody who, fits into both of those camps and understands the value of both, not sort of an either or scenario there.
Palmer, are you is this a little bit of both of like your role as head of marketing? Are you kind of twofold, helping G2 market itself, as well as helping some of those software companies? You kind of involved in both?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly, as anybody's role would be on the marketing side, my chief role is to grow G2, grow our brand, grow what we're doing from a marketing perspective. But I think what's unique about myself and frankly most of the other marketers on our team is that we were either users or customers of G2 before we worked here, and I certainly was at MailChimp and CallRail. We were customers of G2, so I understand what it's like for folks who are either in that customer or kind of prospect side. And our VP of Revenue Marketing is just another longtime G2 customer, and she is really kind of the wizard who can sit down and show you like, here's how you can make the most of G2. And she spends a lot of her time, not only growing our own demand gen strategy, but talking to customers, helping them understand the value. So that's the great thing. I've had the uniqueness throughout my kind of software career of being a marketer who's mostly marketing products, and it helps to speak the language. And frankly, I think our sales team appreciates having some marketers on staff who can kind of go speak the language there with prospects.
No, that definitely makes sense. And it's like, you're, like you said before, you're kind of, practicing what you preach, at the same time. Palmer, tell us what makes G2 stand out against its competitors. And I got to tell you, I don't, a competitor, obviously you know better than me, but, and we don't have to mention those competitors. No, they're not in the podcast, so you are. But I couldn't even tell you what a G2's competitor is. It's not obvious to me. Like, we've had Pepsi on the podcast. Everyone knows their competitor. We have had Lyft on the podcast. You know that. I don't know of G2's competitors, but what separates you?
Yeah, there are other review sites out there. I mean, we were very early to market with G2 about 10 years ago. And so I'd say we have two advantages. The first one on that kind of review site side is just our scale and reach. We've got 80 million software buyers visiting g2.com each year. And that's just huge reach, and it's global. And that gives us an advantage that we can really build on. We've got tremendous organic traffic and SEO because of that. And that helps us in sort of demonstrating value to potential customers as well. So that's sort of the review side. The other side of the coin that I'd say we compete with is sort of the traditional research analyst firms. And that's sort of they've been around for a while, and it's a very top down sort of you've got to get this access to this analyst who's going to then go into their ivory tower and figure out what the best solution is here. We think that we've got this bottoms up approach that really gives you perspective on all of these different software solutions from a customer's vantage point, from the actual folks who are using it. And so that to me is helps us stand out when folks are comparing us against a research analyst firm or trying to figure out what's our value. And listen, it's not an either or scenario for us, but I do think you've got to be addressing, you've got to be looking at sort of peer or customer voice. It's how folks are buying these days. They're not just going to, select the first thing that they see. They're going to do their research. And we think that G2 plays a big part in that process.
And we noticed you guys also were on the Deloitte fastest growing list. We made the list as well, so that's pretty exciting.
Congrats.
Nice. What's some of the things that have attributed to that success?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it just a second ago of like G2 was pretty early on. I mean, there were sites like TripAdvisor or Yelp around when G2 was started, but no one was thinking about this from a software perspective. And frankly, that was sort of the genesis. Our co-founders had worked at a previous company together, and after they sold that, they were sort of figuring out what their next move was going to be. And part of the origin story is they were sitting there realizing, hey, I could go online and read 1,000 reviews about $100 a night hotel room. But if I want to get more information on a piece of software that's going to cost me $100,000, I've just got to go to a sales rep or to like a research analyst, these things that feel very kind of far away or frankly just aren't what I want right now. And so that's sort of where the idea of G2 was born. And I think frankly, that's just such a great sort of product market fit there that it's helped us grow over time. Once you attract those software buyers, get them to the site, start adding reviews, creating that community and that feedback, it's not hard after that to then go get the software vendors to come and say, hey, we've got this great community of folks. We think it's another way that you can engage and reach potential customers.
And one of the key things about our podcast is we have a lot of younger professionals that listen to the podcast. What's one advice you have for either your younger self or some of our younger listeners, early stage professionals?
I've got a personal one and a professional one. The personal one is, it's something folks told me when I was in college, and it was like, you're never going to have as much free time as you have now. And like, I heard it, but I didn't believe it. And as I've gotten older, you just, maybe until the point when I retire or my kids are out of the house, you never get that free time back. And so make the most of it. You're going to have, even though you'll feel really busy earlier in your career or when you're in college, you've still got more time to learn. Well, and that doesn't have to be, professional focus. It could be, I just really want to get into this hobby or learn how to do this thing and take that thing with me throughout the rest of my life. So that's something, if I could go back to, when I was 18, I would definitely make sure I knew that and practice that. And then from like a purely business perspective, my advice is spend time learning the business and the business model. And I say that as someone who's always loved marketing, and that bled into creativity, design, even the product and engineering side. But I think I wish earlier on in my career that I had really learned the X's and O's of business, sort of like not only the kind of investor perspective, but just like financially, how is this business run? What's important? What do we need to be focused on? I've had the luxury and the pleasure of being able to do that as I've gone on in my career. But I just kind of think back, if I had mastered that at 23, 24, 25, who knows what I would be able to do with it now. And so those are sort of the two things, as I look back, I would probably do a little bit differently.
That's great advice, both, and I definitely relate to both of them, especially the personal side, right? Your time for sure. Palmer, talk to us about, I saw G2 does a conference called Reach. Tell us a little bit about that. You just recently had it. Is that virtual? Is that in person?
Yes, it was. We've done it. This was our third time doing Reach. Pre-COVID, we did one of them in person in Chicago. This year, we decided to bring it back as a virtual event, and just was wildly successful. I was thinking about that. Reflecting on, we did it in December 1st, so it's still fairly recent, and we saw registrations come from 60 different countries. And so when you're sort of weighing that virtual versus in person, I can guarantee you there was no ways, folks from 59 other countries would have flown to Chicago or San Francisco to engage in this. So it was really, a great opportunity for us to showcase a bunch of different things. We sort of had a taste or a flavor for everybody. We had a kind of a CEO panel with our CEO and the CEO and co-founder of ZoomInfo. We had a VC panel with several kind of the leading VCs talking about what they're seeing, what software companies need to know, sort of what the future looks like there. And then we brought in some software analysts who looked at, what's happening in the MarTech landscape, what's happening in sort of the go-to-market approach, and then sort of dove into a bunch of like marketing specific kind of tips, tricks, how you can learn from some of the folks. We had the former CMO of Zendesk and Slack and several other folks at Atlassian and others, some just really great companies who I think were able to provide some insights that frankly we just can't get we don't get in our day-to-day, and a lot of times we don't have those resources to lean on. And we wrapped the whole thing up with a couple of master classes just to help folks understand how they can make the most out of G2. So from our side, it was a wildly successful event. So a lot of great engagement on the day of. And the beautiful thing for me as a marketer is that it's still sitting there at reach.g2.com. It's all on demand. You can kind of go engage with it when you want to, which is just the beauty of that being evergreen. And we'll be there until we do the next Reach sometime this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you and you could go, listeners, you heard Palmer, go right to that site. Any plans for when that's going to be coming up?
We'll probably do it. We haven't set a date yet. We'll do it in Q4. We did it December 1st this year, and I think we found as we're all sort of getting back to what the new normal is like at post-COVID. And it does seem like that September, October window gets really busy from an in-person event perspective.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, all right, November, December feel like a good time to put in a virtual event. And as folks are maybe slowing down as they kind of get into the holidays, but still want to engage in some way.
Yeah, I know that it definitely is a good time, especially December. You're right, because a lot of people are like, that's cutting close to the holidays, but a virtual event around that time, because there's nothing, oftentimes you said it does slow down. So be on the lookout for that, the good people listening. Also, Palmer, talk to us about challenges. It's 2023 now, early on in 2023, some marketing challenges, some marketing trends that you think are going to be coming up in 2023.
Yeah, I think, listen, every quarter can be a challenge for marketers. I think there's a couple of things that we're seeing right now. I think a big ground shift that I think we're sort of at the tail end on, but it's been going for a few years, is just a lot of what's happening from a privacy perspective and changing for marketers, with cookies going away and things like that. You really have to not necessarily completely rethink your approach, but understand that metrics may change. There may be a little bit of an evolution in terms of what works, what doesn't, and staying on top of that is something that, listen, that's been a 4 or 5 year journey for me, but I still feel like we're not towards the end of that yet. I think when we're looking at B2B marketing specifically, I think one of the challenges that we face there is, how do we act more like B2C marketers? And that's something that I think hasn't been embraced enough. I think a lot of times B2B marketers can get a little too sort of in their own bubbles, and what are my MQLs converting to SALs? What's that looking like? And you're really selling to humans here, and that's why you've got to frame it. If it's a human to human motion, and how do you do marketing that's going to resonate at that human level? And frankly, I think that's starting to change, but that's a welcome change. But I think it's a challenge because it is. I guess changing the way folks approach marketing. One of the trends that I'm sort of seeing, I think is a great trend, is just, when we look back to 15, even 10, 15 years ago, is just the issue used to be access. Like where were you going to go learn? Where were you going to be able to stay ahead of the curve? And it's like you're maybe waiting for Seth Godin's new book to come out so you could go grab it at Barnes and Noble. And I think just what's happened from a social media, a podcast perspective, we're right here doing that. But just even beyond that, what I've seen crop up in the past 2 to 3 years are these online communities, whether they're Slack groups, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, that really allow folks who are very connected or in similar roles to learn from each other and to share challenges. And that's just something that, it's always existed to a degree, but the circle may have just been really smaller. It may have been that conversation could only happen at that conference when you saddled up to the bar next to 4 folks who are doing the same thing you are. And now it can happen every day in your Facebook feed. And that's a great opportunity for learning, and it helps sort of accelerate. I think it'll help accelerate folks in their careers.
One of our signature questions is around LinkedIn messaging, and I'm sure you get a lot of messages that you're not sure why you're getting, and so we'd love to know what are some of the messages you respond to, and more importantly, what's one that really annoys you?
Yeah, I have a philosophy on LinkedIn. I actually enjoy LinkedIn. I think that more than some folks do, but there's certain folks who just kind of accept any request that comes their way. I need to know the person or have some connection to them, or I'm just not gonna accept it. It doesn't mean we have to personally know each other, but hey, we were on that call together, or we participated in that event together. I just need some connection point there. So, as far as connecting goes, that's one. In terms of messages that I get, what really stands out to me, and this is applies on email too, is that show that you've taken the time to sort of either understand me or my business. And that doesn't mean just saying, oh, I see you went to school at Ole Miss, or I see you live in Atlanta. Say, hey, I saw G2 did this. That was interesting. We've got a solution that could help you do this. So most of the times what I see, the messages that don't work are that they put some kind of mundane personal thing there at the beginning. And then it's just like they jump right into here's what our product does without sort of talking about how that could address a potential pain point or something that you're doing. So for me, it's taking the time to sort of understand, something about what I'm working on or what G2 is working on and how your solution or opportunity would do it. And I'm putting that all through like a sales lens. If it's someone who's just like, hey, I want to connect and learn, or I'm a college student and I want to know more about marketing, I actually welcome and enjoy those. But it's more of that. Most of those LinkedIn messages I feel like we get are from a sales perspective. So try and couch that in a way of like, this is how you can cut through the noise and actually reach that person that you'd like to.
You've worked at quite a few great places, Palmer. So what's been a highlight for you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say during my time at MailChimp, that was just a career highlight. Joining that company in the early days and then leaving when it was, a huge kind of almost just corporate, like leader, I guess you could say, in that space. And there's a particular campaign that we ran, I think it was back in 2017. And it was right after the Serial podcast had come out. So MailChimp was one of the advertisements on that. And that was a big zeitgeist in itself. But we ran this campaign. The sort of kernel of that ad was this, they did a man on the street interview and someone mispronounced the name MailChimp, and we left that in the podcast ad, and it turned out that was a great idea because it really resonated. So we ran a campaign after that was just it was called Did You Mean MailChimp? And it was all these mispronunciations or just weird plays on the name MailChimp. So like we made a song called Mail Shrimp. We showed how you could use a new beauty product called Snail Primp. It was a very out of the box, like big integrated advertising campaign. And that was just a really it's a once in a lifetime sort of campaign to get to work on. And that was a fun one. It ended up winning a Grand Prix award at the Cannes Lions, which is sort of like the Oscars of marketing and advertising. So that was just a really awesome highlight for me. And I say all that, it was crazy, out of the box, very creative, but it led to like one of our best quarters ever. And at the time. And so there's a connection point between those two things. Like you can be super creative and different. And in a lot of cases, you just got to have the courage to go do that. It'll spell business results kind of in the end.
That is awesome. I do remember that, actually, the Serial podcast that my wife made me listen to, but I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then, MailChimp. And then that's another one of those kind of, retention marketing, email marketing companies that are semi part of the vernacular. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Palmer, we've come to the time where it's, get to know you personally. Talk to us about some of your hobbies. Well, you're originally down south. Now you're in Atlanta. You lived in New York for a few years. What brought you to Atlanta? And what do you like doing in your spare time?
Yeah, so I finished school at Ole Miss, and I ended up in Atlanta just because I got a job at that startup I had mentioned. It was very coincidental and good timing that I also around that time started dating a girl who's now my wife, who went to the University of Georgia. So we were a lot closer together there. So Atlanta worked out really well with her being in Athens and me being in Atlanta. And so that's sort of how I've ended up here for kind of the long haul. As far as hobbies go, I tell folks I used to have hobbies and then I had kids, and so I still try to get it in, but I used to run a lot, play basketball, and now I'm lucky to kind of like squeeze in a few minutes on the Peloton or get some push-ups in or something. So we'll see. Maybe as the kids get older, it'll free up a little bit. And outside of that, I'm a big pop culture guy. Love books, movies, TV. Try and stay up on that. As you can see, I got a lot of books here behind me. But again, with kids, it's like you don't get to watch as many movies, or at least you don't get to watch the movies that you'd want to as much anymore, or the TV shows that you may want. So try and make the most of the little time that I have. And then I'm also I'm a sports fan, so I do try and keep up with that. love soccer. So the World Cup was a
Mhm.
real highlight here over the past month. My productivity over November to December may have been slightly affected by the fact of how many soccer games were on during the workday.
Mhm.
But that was fun to see. And then I'm big baseball and college football fan, so love the Braves here in Atlanta, and then support my alma mater, Ole Miss there, which it was a up and down year this year. But my
Mhm.
wife's a UGA grad, so I can just
Yeah.
I can
So
follow
she had
behind
some
her. And
fun this past
I
couple
should
of
I
days.
should
Yeah.
bandwagon that way. It's just my bandwagon my way to a national championship, I guess.
Yeah, back-to-back national champions. I know that's when you said that, I was like, oh, your wife must be very happy with this
Yeah. Oh
recent
yeah.
outcome.
She was up late on Monday night celebrating. I was like, listen, this thing's over. I'm going to bed. So
Yeah, exactly. So, and Palmer, are you still interested in music? Is that still a thing? I remember you
yeah,
said
yeah. I say that,
digital
I'm still,
marketing.
I don't find it's, I read something, there's interesting, like, social studies or social science kind of studies out there that sort of like what the music you listen to from when you were like 12 to 25 or something is sort of like what sticks with you. And I
Hmm.
find that true. I still love music, and that's something you can fit into your life even while you're working. But I just can't keep up with what's new as much as I used
Exactly.
to. So I find myself going back to those classics from either childhood, college, right out of college that I've enjoyed, whether it's alternative rock from back in the day, or stuff that you got into along the way. So it's fun. That's great, but it is. I can already see myself being the uncool teenage parent who's just totally out of touch with what my kids are listening to. They're not quite there yet. They're still into the kiddie music, but one
Yep.
day it'll come, and I'll be very out of touch, even though I used to be very finger on the pulse there.
That everything you're saying there resonates with me because it's like, I just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that
Yep.
Tarantino film. I just watched it in 2022, but I've watched Coco about 77 times, and I'm the same way. I feel like music today. Sometimes I'll see like a Grammy Awards and I'm like, who the heck is, little this and little that, or or the baby who, and I'm like, what? I'm more of a '90s hip hop guy, alternate like rock, like Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all those. So
I had that feeling yesterday. I think they announced the Coachella lineup, and I saw the poster, and like one of the headliners, I was like, I truly have never seen that name before. Now, turns out it's a K-pop group, which that was just never that's
oh
not. I know it's a
wow,
huge world, but not a world that I was in. But I was like, is this the mistake? I've never even heard of this group before. But so I'm like, I'm too old. I'm checked out. Like I got to
yeah.
just stick with what's tried and true.
Yeah, what's your music knowledge like, AJ? I know you're a huge Beatles fan, but where's it go from
Um,
there?
yeah, mostly I would say classic rock. And then I've
Mm,
been playing Hurdle lately. So you guess it's like Wordle, but you guess based on musical tunes.
Oh
So I've
wow.
been expanding into more random songs, like Palmer said, like
yeah.
K-pop genre and whatnot. But no, yeah, no, mostly I stick to classic rock, and all my kids, especially my older one who's 9 now, we had a long commute to his daycare before, and so he was forced to listen to Beatles and Queen and all
Nice.
those type of bands. So now he can identify it. In fact, his first concert was Queen plus Adam Lambert. So he.
That's hey, you're doing good there. That's a
That's
good. I
cool.
feel like I'm glad you've been able to. My kids always force me to turn on the kids' music versus me being like, hey, check out this good stuff that you want to listen to. So I've
Yeah.
lost that battle.
Oh, I know that's interesting. And then also, I wanted to talk to you about Palmer. I remember going to see the Giants play the Falcons in that beautiful stadium
Yeah,
it was a Monday night football, Monday night, but that Sunday, your MLS
yeah,
soccer team was like more people there than at the NFL game. I'm
yeah.
like, what the heck is that? That's crazy.
It's wild that it's been a real success story. The MLS team, Atlanta United. I think the team started in 2017, so right around the time the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium that you mentioned
Hmm.
opened. And there's a couple things. I think there's a lot of folks who are just soccer fans here in Atlanta. There's a big youth soccer culture here, and so there's just some pent up demand. on top of that, you had Atlanta, maybe even like New York, a lot of transplants, a lot of folks who didn't grow up here. So they have their sports teams that they support outside of that. All it takes is going to like a Braves game when they play the Red Sox or the Dodgers or something. There might be more Red Sox or Dodgers fans there than Braves fans. So it's like, no one had a dedicated MLS team. So like, this is the Atlanta team that I'm going to make. And then on top of that, the team was just really good. So that like when they're successful, it's easier to get folks in the seats there. But they for a while there, were selling out most of their home game.
Yeah.
The team is not quite as good as they were 2 or 3 years ago now, so it's sort of slowed down. But it was really cool to see that, and certainly pretty rare. The attendance statistics, it's like, oh, here are the other MLS teams, and then double all of that was what Atlanta was getting at theirs.
And then the year I was there, they had already won. They won the championship, I guess, the year before.
Yeah, they won in 2019, which was like their second or third year in existence. So that awesome. Was pretty cool to see. And I think it'll, we're supposedly going to be one of the big World Cup sites when it comes to the US in 2026. So that'll be, I think, just keep soccer kind of in the forefront down here. And then obviously, like I mentioned, it's huge on the youth side here. So that's great. It's fun to see.
Yeah, it's going to be there. And then looking forward, I think one of the finals is in MetLife Stadium right here in New York. So that's going to be, awesome. I think, great to see. Palmer, thank you so much for taking some time with us. We love what you're doing there at G2. Thanks for sharing your story. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the head of marketing at G2. Check out G2, ladies and gentlemen. Palmer Houchins. This has been awesome. That's Palmer. I'm Vincent. That's Ajay. This has been another episode of The Marketing Stir. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista. Please like, rate, and subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, please email us at themarketingstir@stirista.com. And thanks for listening.